everyone, I'm Mariana, and today we're going to talk about American Gods. The TV show adaptation is almost here. We only have a couple of days left. It's premiering on April 30th on Starz, and it looks like it's going to be amazing. I am unbelievably excited for this. A little bit nervous because you never know how these adaptations are going to go, but I am mostly excited. However, if you're not very familiar with the book that it's based on, the trailers and the general marketing can leave you a little bit confused and unsure about what you're potentially getting into here. So, as someone who has read the book and watched a bunch of interviews, I'm here to tell you, without any spoilers, everything you need to know about American Gods. To begin with, American Gods is based on a fantastic novel by Neil Gaiman, which I highly recommend. I recently read this and I loved every single word of this book. Neil Gaiman is one of my favorite authors. He has such an incredible imagination. His worlds are just fascinating and he has a very beautiful way of telling his stories. He is the man behind the Sandman comics, also novels such as Coraline and Stardust, just to name a few things. He has quite a few other novels that he has written. So what I'm trying to say here is if you're considering reading American Gods, definitely give it a try. American Gods is really unlike anything that's out there. It's somewhere between fantasy and magical realism, and Neil Gaiman leans heavily on mythology here. The more you know about the mythologies that he's referring to, the more you're going to get out of this story, particularly when it comes to Norse mythology. I also found my knowledge of Egyptian and Slavic mythologies very helpful here, but there definitely were other ones that I just had to look up because I was curious. The series, though, is created by Bryan Fuller, famous for shows such as Dead Like Me, Pushing Daisies, and one of my favorites, Hannibal, and Michael Green, who has written a ton of things, but just with this year's releases, he did the story for Alien Covenant and screenplays for Logan, Blade Runner 2049, and Murder on the Orient Express. So the show is definitely in good hands here. Plus, the first 3 episodes are directed by David Slade, who also directed some Hannibal episodes, as well as such movies as Hard Candy and 30 Days of Night. And of course, Neil Gaiman, the author of the novel, is very involved in the process as well, which is great. The basic plot here is actually pretty simple. We meet this guy named Shadow Moon, who is at the end of his prison sentence and looking forward to happily living out the rest of his days with his wife Laura. However, he gets released a little bit early because his wife is actually killed. After his release, he encounters a man named Mr. Wednesday who offers Shadow a job of being his bodyguard and assistant as Mr. Wednesday makes his way across America. So after this, we are in for a bit of a strange and messed up road trip, and we also hear that there may be a war coming between the new gods and the old gods. I have already mentioned Shadow, played by Ricky Whittle, and his wife Laura, played by Emily Browning, as well as the mysterious and very clever Mr. Wednesday, played by Ian McShane, which is just the most perfect casting to ever exist, and in the book he was my favorite character by far. Depending on how many clues you end up picking up on, you may figure out what his deal is pretty early on, but for the sake of keeping this spoiler free, I'm just going to leave it at that. As far as the old gods go, we have Bilquis, the goddess of love, which is also a name for the Queen of Sheba, played by Yetide Badaki, Mad Sweeney, who is a really tall leprechaun, played by Pablo Schreiber, Chernabog, who is played by Peter Stormare, who is a Slavic evil god, and the counterpart of Belobog, who is his polar opposite. There are also 3 mythological sisters here to kind of keep watch, who technically belong to a different Slavic god, but I think Neil Gaiman just wanted to keep the mythological characters from the same culture together here. We have Loki Lysmith, who is obviously Loki, Easter, played by Kristen Chenoweth, another perfect casting, who actually comes from Norse and Germanic background as the goddess of spring. We have Mr. Nancy, played by Orlando Jones, who is an African trickster god who takes on the shape of a spider and knows all kinds of stories. And Mr. Jekyll and Mr. Ibis, who are Egyptian gods Anubis and Thoth. As for the new gods, we have Technical Boy, god of technology, Media, we all know what that means, played by Gillian Anderson, which is very interesting, and their leader, Mr. World, played by Crispin Glover, who is all about globalization and knowing everything about everyone. In the book, there are also the intangibles, but I'm not sure if they're actually bringing that into the show. American Gods is a very layered story that deals with a lot of important and relevant issues without feeling preachy, which is something that I really hope the show is able to retain. Neil Gaiman deals with this brilliantly, and my hope is that they're able to bring in all of these things and spark conversations without beating the viewers over the head with them. Obviously, American Gods deals with the concept of belief and the idea that we all worship someone or something, whether it's defined by organized religion or not. There's also the idea of belief feeding the gods and making them stronger, and the lack of belief making them weaker, which can be applied in a few different ways to just everyday world and things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. There is a strong theme of new versus old, as you can tell from the premise and the characters, and that goes for culture, values, and the way of thinking. There's also an amazing depiction of America as the melting pot of cultures that it is, and there are all of these smaller stories interjected about people who are coming to America and bringing their gods and their beliefs with them and having to learn how to coexist. And the creators of the show did mention that they are going to bring these smaller stories into the show as well, so that's very exciting. And obviously, through the new gods, Neil Gaiman had a lot to say about the world and the society today. As far as people coming into this without reading the book, you can expect a complex and fascinating world packed with mythology and memorable characters, all of that wrapped around a rather simple storyline. It will be pretty moderately paced, but a lot of the value and the beauty of the story comes from the details. You can expect it to be thought-provoking, discussion-encouraging, unique, quotable, and potentially occasionally confusing. However, if the show creators do the source material justice, which I really hope they do, American Gods is going to be one of the most wonderful, insane, and fascinating shows out there, so get excited. And for those of us who have read the book, it is my understanding that we're only going to get the first third of the novel in this first season, with a lot more things to come down the road as long as the show does well. They're also going to go beyond the book in certain ways. They're going to expand on existing characters to give them more of a presence. They're going to create some new, well, they have already created some new characters specifically for the show that are not in the book at all. They're going to inject some more social issues and kind of important discussion topics to update the story to make it more relevant to what's going on in the world today. And they're also going to play with the timeline a little bit. So even though we may know the story, there still are going to be some surprises in there for us. Normally, as a fan of the book, I would be a bit concerned about changes like this, but taking into account the type of novel that American Gods is, I think the expanding of the world and the expanding of the characters actually fits really, really well, because there definitely is room for it. Even Neil Gaiman said that there were characters and stories that he wanted to include, but he felt like he couldn't because the book was getting really long. So I think this is actually going to be a good thing, especially considering that Neil Gaiman is very involved in the creation of the show. I'm pretty optimistic about the changes and additions to all of this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. That's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions for me about American Gods, if there's something that you wished I would have mentioned and I just forgot about it. But please, if you're going to go into spoilers and and if you're going to discuss what happens in the book, do so with a spoiler warning so people don't spoil themselves and can just enjoy the show knowing very little about it. And also let me know if you're as excited about this as I am, because I'm pretty freaking excited. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you soon in the next video. Bye!